1. In the neon-lit streets of Tokyo, where the night never truly falls silent, I found my life's peculiar rhythm as a night shift taxi driver. The city's nocturnal face was a shifting mosaic of office workers, party-goers, and the occasional drifters. But it was one night in late autumn when I first saw him, my midnight caller. He hailed my taxi near Shinjuku, a figure cloaked in the anonymity of a dark coat and a low-brimmed hat. His destination was always the same, an address that led to an old, abandoned building in a desolate part of the city. The place had an eerie stillness, a stark contrast to the bustling streets from where we came. The first few times, I thought nothing of it, dismissing him as just another eccentric character in Tokyo's sprawling narrative. But as the nights passed and he appeared more frequently, a chill of curiosity ran down my spine. His presence in my cab became a silent, haunting. His destination, a nagging riddle. Driven by an inescapable intrigue, I began to research the building. To my astonishment, it was linked to a series of unexplained disappearances dating back decades. The stories were varied and inconsistent, but one thread bound them together. People who went into that building seldom came out. Each time he entered my taxi, a sense of unease grew. His eyes, barely visible beneath the hat's brim, seemed to carry a depthless sorrow. His voice, when he gave his address, was a whisper, as though carrying a secret he longed to share. Then, one night, driven by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to follow him. As I watched him enter the building, the city's ambient noise faded into a hushed silence. The building loomed, its dark windows like unblinking eyes. Inside, the air was thick with the dust of forgotten years. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls as I followed the faint sound of his footsteps. The building seemed to unravel like a labyrinth, leading me deeper into its heart. That's when I saw it, a flicker of a shadow, a ghostly outline that danced away as I approached. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of dread and anticipation propelling me forward. In the bowels of the building, I found a room untouched by time. There he stood, facing away from me, his head bowed. As I approached, he turned slowly. The hat fell away, revealing a face not of flesh and blood, but of memories and shadows. The face of a man long lost to the world. His story unfolded in whispers. He was once like me, a taxi driver from a bygone era. One night he brought a passenger here, a woman fleeing from unseen dangers. When he tried to help her, they both became trapped in a sinister game played by the building's malevolent spirit. For years, he had been trying to lead others to help, to break the cycle that bound him. But each attempt ended in the same tragic disappearance. His existence became an endless night, a spectral prisoner in a forgotten corner of Tokyo. The realization hit me with the force of a breaking wave. I was his latest attempt, his last hope. With each piece of his story, the building's oppressive grip seemed to weaken. A plan formed in my mind, to confront the spirit, to end this nightmare. Armed with nothing but my resolve and the echoes of his tale, I ventured deeper into the darkness. The building fought back, its corridors twisting and turning in impossible ways, but his whispers guided me. In the heart of the building, I found it, a darkness deeper than night, a void where the malevolent spirit dwelled. It was a tempest of anger and pain, a whirlwind of trapped souls. With every ounce of courage, I called out to the spirit, offering understanding, offering release. The storm raged, then hesitated, as if considering my words. In that moment of calm, I felt the souls trapped within, including my midnight caller, surge forward, breaking free. The building shuddered, its malevolent energy dissipating as dawn's first light broke over. To Kaoyo, the building was just a building once more. Its decades of darkness ended. I emerged into the morning, a different man than who I had been. The city around me awoke, oblivious to the night's events. But in my heart, I carried the story of the Midnight Caller, a reminder of the thin veil between the known and the unknown in Tokyo's neon-lit streets. Story 2. The dense jungles of Okinawa, with their intertwined canopies and whispers of ancient secrets, had always held a mystical allure for me. As an archaeologist, I found my greatest passion in unearthing the stories long buried under the earth. But nothing prepared me for what I would discover in those green depths. It began as a routine excavation. We were investigating a series of ancient ruins, remnants of the Ryukyu kingdom, when I stumbled upon it. A hidden shrine, overgrown with vines and moss, as if nature itself was trying to keep it secret. Intrigued, I cleared away the foliage, revealing intricate carvings of deities and spirits, typical of Okinawan mythology. But it was what I found inside the shrine that changed everything. An artifact unlike anything I had ever seen. A small, delicately crafted statue of a woman, her features serene yet sorrowful. That night, after returning to my lodgings, the strangeness began. I was plagued by nightmares of a woman wailing in despair, her cries echoing through dark, endless corridors. During the day, I would catch glimpses of her, a fleeting shadow, a reflection in the mirror that wasn't mine. Driven by a blend of fear and academic curiosity, I delved into the local library's archives, seeking anything that could explain my experiences. I uncovered a forgotten legend of a priestess who was betrayed and murdered over a forbidden love. Her spirit, the legend said, was bound to an artifact, the very statue I had found. The more I learned, the more intense the hauntings became. Objects in my room moved on their own, and the temperature would drop suddenly, leaving me shrouded in cold. But it was her voice that haunted me the most. A soft whisper, always just behind me. Help me. I sought out an old local historian, Mr. Sato, who knew about the ancient spiritual practices of Okinawa. He listened to my story with a grave face and then told me what I feared. To put the priestess's spirit to rest, I had to return the artifact to its rightful place in the shrine. That night, as I held the statue, her presence became overwhelming. It was as if she was right there, standing beside me, her sorrow a tangible weight in the air. Guided by Mr. Sato's instructions, I performed a small ritual of appeasement, offering incense and prayers in the ancient dialect of the Ryukyuans. With the artifact back in the shrine, I felt a shift in the air, a lightness, as if a long-held breath was finally being released. The statue glowed faintly, and for a moment I saw her. The priestess, not as a shadow or a haunting specter, but as a young woman, her eyes filled with gratitude and peace. As her form faded away, the jungle around me seemed to sigh, the leaves rustling in a gentle breeze that hadn't been there before. The nightmares ceased, the whispers quieted, and the shadow that had followed me was gone. I left Okinawa with more than just photographs and notes. I carried with me a deep understanding of the thin line between history and myth, between the world we see and the one we feel. The forgotten shrine of Okinawa was no longer just a part of the island's past. It had become a part of my story too, a haunting melody that would linger in the depths of my soul forever. Story 3. As a landscape photographer, I had captured the serene beaches of Okinawa, the bustling streets of Tokyo, but Mount Fuji, with its majestic and almost mystical presence, had always eluded me. So, when I finally set out for the iconic mountain, my heart was brimming with anticipation. Little did I know, I was about to capture something far more elusive and chilling than I could have ever imagined. The first few days were uneventful, filled with the usual routine of setting up for sunrise shots and long hikes for the perfect vantage points. Mount Fuji was generous in its beauty, presenting me with breathtaking scenes. But it was on the fourth night that things took a strange turn. As I reviewed the day's photos, I noticed something odd in one of the frames, a dark, humanoid shadow near the edge of the forest. Assuming it was a trick of the light or a fault in my camera, I ignored it. However, the following night, the shadow appeared again, this time closer and more defined. Curiosity piqued. I decided to investigate. The next day, equipped with my camera and a sense of cautious bravery, I ventured towards where I'd seen the shadow. The forest near Mount Fuji was dense, and an eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. As I delved deeper, a sense of unease crept over me. The forest seemed to watch me, its ancient trees whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of it. The shadow, it moved with an unnatural grace, flitting between the trees. I followed, my camera at the ready. But every time I thought I had it in my frame, it vanished. It was as though it was leading me, drawing me further into the heart of the forest. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, I found myself in a clearing. The shadow stood at the far end, its form more solid than ever. I raised my camera, my hands trembling slightly, and took a photo. Flash illuminated the clearing, and for a brief moment, the shadow's features became clear. It was not a trick of light or a figment of my imagination. It was the form of a samurai, his eyes filled with an ancient sorrow. As quickly as he appeared, he vanished, leaving me alone in the clearing. A chill ran down my spine as the reality of what I had just seen sunk in. I hurried back to my camp, my mind racing with questions. That night, I couldn't sleep, the image of the samurai haunting my thoughts. The next morning, I visited a local village and shared my experience with an elderly resident. She listened intently, nodding as if my story confirmed something she already knew. She told me of an ancient legend, of a samurai who had sworn to protect Mount Fuji and its surrounding lands. In life, he had been a fierce warrior, but in death, he became a guardian spirit, watching over the mountain and its visitors. Feeling a mix of awe and fear, I knew I had to see him again. That evening, I returned to the clearing, this time without my camera. As the sun set, the shadow appeared once more, his presence less intimidating now that I knew his story. I bowed deeply, showing my respect, and spoke to him, my words carried away by the wind. I told him of my admiration for the mountain, for the beauty and peace it brought to those who visited it. The samurai's spirit seemed to listen, and as the moon rose high in the sky, he gave a slight nod before fading away into the night. I left Mount Fuji the next day, my memory card filled with stunning landscapes, but the most extraordinary photo I had taken was etched in my mind, the shadow of the samurai, the protector of the mountain. The experience changed the way I viewed my photography. It was not just about capturing the physical beauty of a place, but also about understanding and respecting the stories and spirits that dwelled within it. Mount Fuji was more than just a mountain to me now. It was a reminder of the unseen, a bridge between the past and the present, a place where legends still walked among the shadows. Story 4. Our camping trip to Hokkaido was supposed to be an escape from the city's bustle, a week of camaraderie and adventure under the vast starlit sky as we set up camp in a clearing surrounded by dense forest. The air was crisp and the night was quiet, save for the occasional rustling of leaves. We were a group of 5 friends, bound by our love for the outdoors and our thirst for something beyond the ordinary. We found that something in Hokkaido, but it was far from what we had anticipated. It was our second night when we first saw the lights. Distant and ephemeral, they flickered like the wisps, dancing just at the edge of the forest, mesmerized. We followed them, abandoning our campfire and warm cans of beer. The lights seemed playful, receding whenever we got closer, leading us deeper into the woods. Eventually, they vanished, leaving us bewildered and slightly spooked in the heart of the forest. We returned to camp, laughing off our strange encounter as a quirk of nature, perhaps bioluminescent insects or a trick of the light. But inside, we each felt a flicker of unease, an unspoken acknowledgement that what we saw was neither normal nor explainable. The lights appeared again the next night, and the night after. Each evening, they would lead us on a merry chase through the woods, always out of reach, always disappearing when we thought we were close. On the 4th night, things took a turn. Ethan, the most adventurous of our group, proposed that we split up to find the source of the lights. Reluctantly, we agreed, pairing up and venturing in different directions. I teamed up with Maya, while Ethan went alone, his camera slung over his shoulder, determined to capture a photo of the mysterious lights. Hours passed, and the forest remained a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Mia and I found nothing, and when we regrouped at the camp, we found that the others had had similar luck, but Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as we called out for him, our voices swallowed by the vastness of the forest. The night grew colder, and the once intriguing lights now seemed menacing, flickering mockingly at the edge of the woods. We searched until the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. Exhausted and worried, we decided to head to the nearest ranger station for help. But as we packed our gear, a figure emerged from the forest. It was Ethan, disheveled and pale, his eyes wide with an unspeakable fear. He spoke in halting sentences, describing how he had followed the lights to a clearing where they coalesced into a single bright orb. It was there he saw them, the spirits. They were ancient, ethereal figures, clad in garments from another time. They whispered in a language he couldn't understand, reaching out to him with translucent hands. Frozen in terror, Ethan had snapped a photo, a flash momentarily dispelling the apparition. He ran blindly through the forest until he found his way back to camp. We listened in stunned silence, the reality of our situation sinking in. Ethan showed us the photo, a blur of light, but unmistakably human figures were visible within the glow. The ranger we spoke to later that day listened to our story with a grave face. He spoke of an old legend of spirits that guarded the forest, sometimes leading travelers astray. It was a tale passed down through generations, a reminder of respect for the unseen forces of nature. We left Hokkaido with a newfound respect for the mysteries of the natural world. The photo Ethan took was a haunting reminder of our encounter, a moment when the veil between our world and the unknown had thinned, revealing the ghostly lights of Hokkaido. As we drove away, I glanced back at the forest, half expecting to see the lights one last time, but the woods were still, and the lights were gone, their secret remaining hidden in the shadows of the towering trees. Story 5. The decision to leave my bustling life in America and settle in a tranquil Japanese village was driven by a desire for peace and an enduring fascination with the culture. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, the village was picturesque, known for its breathtaking sakura grove that came alive with pink blossoms every spring. I rented a small, traditional house on the outskirts of the village, charmed by its rustic beauty and the sprawling sakura grove that bordered it. The locals were friendly, offering smiles and bows, but I noticed they always hesitated when they passed the grove, especially as dusk approached. One evening, drawn by the serene beauty of the blossoming trees under the moonlight, I decided to take a walk in the grove. The air was filled with the sweet scent of cherry blossoms, and a gentle breeze rustled through the branches. That's when I first heard them. Faint whispers, like the sighs of a long-forgotten melody. Curious, I followed the sound deeper into the grove. The whispers grew louder, more coherent, as if guiding me. I reached a clearing where the moonlight cast a soft glow, and the whispers abruptly stopped. An eerie feeling washed over me, and I quickly returned home, the silence of the grove now heavy and ominous. The next day, I asked the village elder about the grove. He sighed, a look of ancient sorrow in his eyes, and told me of a legend passed down through generations. The grove, he said, was believed to be haunted by the spirits of star-crossed lovers who died tragically before they could marry. Their whispers were their attempts to communicate, to find each other in the afterlife. Night after night, drawn by a mix of fear and intrigue, I returned to the grove. Each time, the whispers guided me to the clearing, but nothing else happened. It became a ritual, a strange connection I felt with the spirits and their unfulfilled love. One evening, as the cherry blossoms were at the peak of their bloom, the whispers led me to a different part of the grove. There, illuminated by the soft moonlight, was a small, old shrine I hadn't noticed before. Engraved on the shrine were two names, and I realized they were the names of the lovers from the legend. As I stood there, the air around me grew colder, and the whispers intensified. They were no longer just sighs, but words, pleading for release, for closure. I knew what I had to do. The following day, I gathered offerings, incense, flowers, and a small piece of paper on which I wrote a prayer for the lovers. That night, under the watchful eyes of the full moon, I laid the offerings at the shrine and spoke the prayer aloud, asking for peace for the lost souls. As I finished, a wind swept through the grove, scattering the cherry blossoms like a flurry of pink snow. The whispers ceased, and for the first time, the grove was filled with a profound silence. I returned to the village, a sense of calm enveloping me. The villagers noticed the change too. They no longer avoided the grove but walked near it, some even venturing under the cherry blossoms. The Sakura Grove remained a place of beauty and tranquility. But for me, it was also a reminder of love's enduring power, a place where two lost souls found peace. The whispers in the Sakura Grove had ceased, but their story lived on in the heart of the village and in the rustle of the cherry blossoms. Each spring,